Everything had a name. Energy was everything. Before humans could name anything, before the concepts of universe, matter, or time were born, there was something that existed without needing to be proven. No shape, no form, no sound, no light. It was not a thing, because no one had yet thought that it needed a name. Everything remained in a state that, if forced to use words, we can only call primordial. But the primordial was not an empty void. That emptiness contained the entirety of potential. Not chaos, but unformed. Not darkness, but without need for light. All possibilities lay interwoven, not yet separated, not knowing what was before or after. If there was anything like a breath, it was the breath of all things not yet divided. At that time, there was no beginning to tell, and no end to fear. No creator, no living beings. No purpose, no order, no explanation. If there was anything resembling movement, it went nowhere, because there was nowhere to go. It was silent as if nothing had ever happened, yet in truth, it never ceased to be. Some ancient civilizations somehow seem to have touched this unnameable thing, not through machines or rituals, not through prayers or supplications, but through a state of silent awareness that had never been fragmented. They did not ask questions because they saw no need to ask. They did not affirm nor deny. They simply were in it, like a drop of water in the ocean without knowing it is water. If anyone ever saw, they could not describe it, because to describe, language is needed. And language is only born when object and subject are separated. But at that moment, there was no someone to see something, no eyes to witness, no mind to interpret. We today call it primordial energy, original energy, or primal energy. But in truth, all names came later. That thing did not need to be called, did not need to be remembered, and did not need to be proven. It simply was. And precisely because it simply was, it never disappeared. If one says that from it the entire universe was born, it is only a later generation speculation. But if one claims it was never born because nothing was lost, is that wrong? No one is certain, because all reasoning comes from the minds of a species that appeared very late. Perhaps even now, it still exists in its entirety. The only difference is, we are no longer in the state to recognize it. When energy began to split itself into myriad forms, if there was ever a moment that could be called a transformation, it was not a beginning in the way we understand. No explosion, no burst of light, no witnesses, only silent potential beginning to stir, as though a dream were dreaming of itself. Some say everything began with an invisible expansion. But if it expanded, from where? And into what? At that time, there was no space to hold it, no time to measure it, no unit to count it. Saying it expanded is merely the most reasonable explanation of a mind that appeared billions of years too late. But however one describes it, primordial energy seemed to split itself into different forms. No one commanded it, no one controlled it. Like a body of uncolored water suddenly spreading into many shades for no particular reason. What humans later called light, matter, and fundamental particles were only tiny fragments torn from a unified whole that once had no need to divide. No one knows why opposites were born from that oneness, why yang arose with yin, why heat came with cold, why the heavy separated from the light, why light could not stand with darkness. Some guess that to experience itself, energy was forced to duplicate into two opposing poles. But that is only a hypothesis of a species fond of assigning meaning to everything. Through countless transformations no one could count, fragments of energy gradually condensed, swirling together into the first bright points within stillness. Not because there was any need to illuminate, but simply because it happened. Celestial bodies were born without a blueprint, without an ultimate purpose. They did not travel on a set path, but simply moved according to an unseen order that no one stood outside to observe. From the clouds of primordial matter, spheres began to form, spinning in an as yet unnamed expanse. Galaxies were born like the long breaths of an undefined cosmos. Perhaps billions of cycles of formation and dissolution have taken place from then until now, but no one counted, and there was no need to count. If one says that energy is trying to rearrange itself into specific forms, is that correct? Or if one claims that everything is mere coincidence without purpose, is that any more certain? No answer is complete, because even the questions do not arise from a place that once knew. We, those who came later, who look up and see stars, believe that it is a vast picture. But perhaps it is only a few specks of dust on the surface of a movement far longer than the memory of all civilizations combined. And the most ironic thing is, everything called the universe, nature, substance, may only be temporary garments of something that once had no shape, no name, and no need to be understood. When matter forgot it was once energy, if the first rays of light were the opening whisper, then matter was perhaps the first layer of memory beginning to thicken. No one knows exactly at what moment those cold halos of light compressed themselves into particles, into dust, into stone, into whirling masses, as if they had known motion even before motion had a name. From silent collisions, celestial bodies began to take shape. There was no map, no coordinate system, no blueprint sketched out before their formation. And yet, strangely enough, order emerged from chaos. Or rather, what we call chaos may never have lacked order at all. It's just that humans came too late to understand the pattern embedded within it. Some places grew so cold that even light ceased to appear. Others burned so hot that everything melted beyond recognizable form. There were regions that spun slowly as though sleeping, while others spiraled like storms that refused to rest. In the rhythm of all that, atoms, the smallest units according to human language, were born without ever being named by anyone. At some later point, from stabilized clusters of matter, planets coalesced. Among the countless celestial bodies no one had time to count, there was one place not too hot, not too cold, not dense enough to collapse, nor diffuse enough to vanish. Much later, humans would call it Earth. But at the moment of its formation, no one awarded it a name. It was no accident that matter there began to soften again, to become more fluid, more transformable, into what humans would eventually label water, gas, organic, carbon, or any other term that helped them feel intelligent. But before anything had a name, it was simply the ongoing metamorphosis of energy shifting its costume. And again, without anyone witnessing the cause, certain molecules began to link in ways that seemed purposeful. From there, a notion flickered into being, one that humanity would later attach the word life to. Perhaps it wasn't a beginning at all, but merely a branching of a stream that had never paused. What's fascinating is this. Once matter became complex, it began to forget it had once been energy. And when life emerged, it no longer remembered that there was once a time when it had no form. No one stood beside it to whisper, "You are only a temporary state of something once invisible and whole." Perhaps forgetting was the only way the game could go on. If nothing forgot, would anything agree to manifest in billions of different shapes? Some say nature operates by laws. But what are laws if not names humans impose on things they did not create? Others claim everything arises by random chance. Yet if all is random, how do structures unfold in such seamless succession? And from within that unfolding, life stepped into a journey it did not know it had begun. When life covers its eyes to play the game of living, from nameless blocks of matter, life did not appear with a roar. It did not cheer, did not introduce itself to anyone, did not declare a reason for existing. It just happened, silently, patiently, repeating itself over hundreds of millions of years as if there were nothing to rush. No one recorded the first moment a cell knew how to replicate itself. No witness saw when the first organism separated from the water, crawled onto the shore, and began a new cycle of transformation. No species stood outside to call it evolution. It was all just the continuation of something that constantly shifted to never cease existing. Then, at a moment unclear whether early or late, a branch of organisms suddenly gained the ability to observe itself. It did not yet know how to ask questions, did not yet know how to name emotions, but within it already lay the seed of self-awareness, and somehow that led to the ego. When memory began to form, life also began to forget. For only by forgetting its own infinity would it agree to live in a body with limits. Only by forgetting that it once had no shape would it accept having a face. Only by forgetting it was once a flow would it consent to stand still and become human. Over time, The ego grew alongside perception. Humans gained the ability to remember and also the ability to hide memories. They knew pain, so they learned to avoid it. They knew fear, so they created armor. They knew regret, so they buried it deep. No one taught them to do this. It lay somewhere in the subconscious, like a survival mechanism from before anyone had a name for it. And from that moment, the game of forgetting began. No one forced them to join. No one organized it. Somehow, they themselves became both the players and the ones covering their own eyes. When a child covers their eyes to play hide and seek, they do not feel they are doing something absurd. They only find the game more fun when they cannot see. In the same way, humans step into livelihoods, struggles, love, competition, desires, failures, and then rush on again, as if all of it were a game with no finish line. Then at some point, someone stops. Not because of enlightenment, but because they suddenly hear within themselves a strange echo. Why am I running? What am I chasing? And since when did I agree to cover my eyes and step into this? That question cannot be answered immediately, nor is it certain an answer is even necessary. But it is enough to make one pause for a moment, enough to dust off an ancient layer of memory, a layer of memory about something once nameless, shapeless, limitless, yet still present in countless forms. Perhaps the primordial energy has never disappeared. It is only observing itself through the guise of humans and waiting to see when the player will remove the blindfold from their eyes.